It is 5:01 p.m. and we are beginning this evening with an executive session for 10 minutes. The purpose of this executive session is to evaluate the qualifications of applicants for public employment and to discuss the legal counsel potential litigation and the legal or financial risks of a course of action. We will return at 5:10 p.m. to begin our special meeting. Thank you. executive session adjourned at 5:09 p.m. It is now 5:12 p.m., and I'm calling this special meeting to order. At this time, we'll take a roll call for attendance. I will call each board member's name, and if they're present, I'll indicate their presence by saying present. Director Gregory.
Present.
Director Song.
Present.
Director Clark. Director Clark is absent. Vice President Cook.
Present.
And I am present. Vice President Cook, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yep.
Good evening. This is a special meeting of the Kent School District Board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. We thank those of you who have come to this meeting, those who are viewing via our live stream. The purpose of the special meeting is to approve a consent agenda. We will start with item 1.06, the land acknowledgement. Director Song, will you read our land acknowledgement?
We acknowledge.
Director, oh, you have it. Okay, great. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
My
We
fault.
acknowledge we are gathered upon the ancestral lands of the Muckleshoot Indian tribe, who historically lived throughout the area between the Cascade Mountains and Puget Sound.
Perfect. We now move to item 2.0, our consent agenda item.
Before we get there, President Margell, I would like to add a couple of things, or actually just one thing, to our agenda today.
So this is a consent agenda item on a special meeting.
I understand.
So we typically, as procedure, have not added items onto our consent agenda item for
I
a
understand.
special meeting.
We're not disallowed from doing so, though, correct?
I do believe it's allowed, but again, it's not our normal procedure.
Okay, that's fine. So I move to add board communication to our agenda today.
I'll second that.
All those in favor of adding board consent onto the agenda, and we'll do a roll call vote.
Do we not need
Director
to
Gregory?
discuss first?
I'm sorry, repeat what you said.
Do we not need to discuss adding that to our agenda first?
If you would like to have discussion,
I don't think
we are now open for discussion.
Thank you. The reason I want to discuss this is I think it's important that we go over a few things, like as far as our communication is concerned, so that we don't just keep leaving this behind. It's something that I brought up a few meetings ago, and I just feel that we haven't addressed it yet, and I would like to kind of get to the bottom of that. I know it might add a little bit of time for us today, but I think that it would be important for us to do so.
Do you have specific examples you want to talk about? Or,
So I just want to...
I need more context before I can make a decision.
Sure. So my concern is that from the dais, we have had some pretty contentious words said here, and I just kind of want to cover the idea that we are here to do the work of our board in a cordial way amongst our board, and that I would like for us to discuss a little bit about why that is, and maybe reiterate our board policy regarding our board communication, just because I think it is important, and we still have yet to address the inflammatory words that our president has said in the past. So that is my reasoning for wanting to discuss this.
Again, I would go back and say that we traditionally, as a board, do not add on to special agenda items. It doesn't give us an opportunity to be able to do this. We've had times in the past where things have been brought up without ability of the entire board to be able to know what these are. And unfortunately, untruths have been said, and then we've had to go back and say that, show that they were untruths. actually, let's just call them lies, were said, and we had to prove that because the entire board doesn't have that. We also don't have Director Clark here today. This would be more appropriate for a full board meeting.
I'd like to add that I did request this last Thursday. I thought that was plenty of time for it to be added to our agenda. That was denied without, I believe, any input from the rest of the board. All I received was an email from our superintendent stating that it would not be added.
I am concerned that we are missing a director to have this full conversation. And I know that we knew he was not going to be at this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to add it to, we have one more special meeting, which is in 2 weeks. But I feel like if we don't have Director Clark as part of that conversation, I think we do a disservice. And I would also like to have a path forward. So like, what is the request? And like, what do you want to see from other board members? And then how can we all work together? And like, I almost feel like we need like some type of working session or a conversation session that we can have that.
My concern is that, you know, in the past, I might have agreed with that statement. Given the fact that our superintendent's evaluation was done without 2 board members present, that seems a little bit of a reach to me. Just because this I think is less important than that, and yet that continued without 2 board members present.
But in defense of that, it was made aware of when we were going to have that discussion. We were notified 45 days in advance and 30 days in advance. We were given all of the materials to review ahead of time. And I'm not sure why you were unable to attend. So I understand that. We did have a quorum to have that conversation, and we have to have 3 board members to have that quorum. And I understand what you're saying here, but you're asking for the entire board to weigh in for that question. So I'm just asking for clarification.
I understand that, and although I would like for Director Clark to be here for this meeting and to help through that discussion, he is also leaving this board. He won't be here much longer, and he had his choice to join this meeting. I joined while on vacation with my children at Disney World, and took time away from my own children to do so. And so I think it is fairly obvious that I find it important enough to be at these meetings, even if I have to do so from a place where it is detrimental to me and my own family. The fact that Director Clark doesn't feel the same way is up to him. As to my unattendance or non-attendance at the meeting that was for the discussion of the superintendent's evaluation, this conversation actually speaks directly to that. The reason for my absence during that meeting was due to bullying behavior that was shown from the dais here by our board president. And so to me, that's an important distinction in that, my purpose for not wanting to attend in a meeting where I didn't feel like I had support in the one person that has been supportive of me throughout the time of my being here was for that very reason. And this discussion speaks exactly to that.
So I just want to point out one thing. Your inference just now from what you just said was you're inferring that it's not important for him and he's taking time away from his family. And so you're now inferring that Director Clark is not invested in being on the school board. You also just said that he is leaving the board. You can argue that I too may or may not be leaving the board. I am running to retain my seat, but I may not be on this board. The makeup of this board may be different. So I still think if you want the board to move forward in its current configuration until December, because we have 6 months worth of work ahead of us to do, I still think it's important. Again, Superintendent Vela is also not here to also assist and weigh in on for his part of this process as well. So I'm just concerned that I understand it's important. I have asked for it to be added to the agenda as well. I just think that we normally have that at a full board meeting, and we have data behind it. And I am one of those people that have to investigate and review and look at and understand, and look up the RWCs and the board policies. I'm one of those people. I'm a data person, so I think I'm concerned that I'm unprepared to have that conversation, and I think it is an important conversation, and I want to be prepared for it. I guess that's my piece.
Can I ask a question? My only question with that is, I did send you an email on Thursday asking for this to be added, which should have given you nearly a week to prepare if you so chose. Did you read my email on Thursday?
Yeah, I did, and then I responded, and then Superintendent Vela responded back that he was not adding it, and it's at his discretion to do that.
That's incorrect, first of all.
Well, that decision was made. I'm unaware of who was supposed to make the decision. It was made. So I did not come prepared tonight because it was not added to the agenda. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand that. So just to get this fully understood, you made it clear that you were interested in possibly discussing that, and Superintendent Vela said that we weren't going to be adding it. Is that correct?
I didn't speak to him directly, no. I got the email saying he was not adding it. So we got that email communication. I did not speak to him directly to it.
Okay.
I have expressed that this topic in the past to Superintendent Vela, that I wanted to add this to a topic when it needs to be appropriately on the topic. And at that time, was indicated to me that it would be during a full board meeting, that these meetings are for the consent agenda items to keep the business of the district happening during the summer. So I am willing to go against our normal protocol and at the next meeting have a full discussion of that when Director Clark can be here and we are all present and have that discussion and really address your concerns and then come up with a plan for that.
Okay.
And I want you to be a member of the board. I look to your leadership to help and guide me. I've come to you many times on different topics. So I think it's an important topic, and I don't want to shortchange it. That's what I'm trying to say. I want a full discussion, and I want it to be a discussion item, not an add-in.
I understand. I just want to clarify on that, though. So when you reached out, did you specify that you were approving that you wanted to also have this discussion at this meeting, or were you just emailing him to ask about it? I just want to clarify.
So it was before your meeting, before your email came out on Thursday. This was at the previous meeting when this came up for discussion that we had it. After that meeting, at the end of that meeting,
I see.
I was walking out with him and I said, when can we have this discussion? I think it needs to be a full discussion. Because again, I want to clarify, I misinterpreted your email. I thought we were talking about the email chain that we then determined that President Margell did not get. And then we found out that it was misleading in how the emails were coming. So then President Margell had indicated at that meeting that it would be at our offsite when we had our counseling session come in. I cannot think of her name, who comes and talks to us about process and protocol. We have that meeting in the fall.
Retreat.
And we would discuss it further then. And I had said, I am open to having it as an agenda item. And I was told that it would not be over the summer, that it would be in August at a board meeting when we had the full board present and have a bigger discussion. Because the consent agendas, these meetings are intended to be to keep the business of the district working, paying bills, making sure we have the right procedures in place. We're talking about keeping the business running over the summer and getting people into place to fill jobs for the fall.
Okay. So there was no communication from you after my email last Thursday, is that right?
No, I did not
Okay.
email him directly after last Thursday, no.
I just wanted to make sure that was the case, because otherwise it would be inappropriate for the superintendent to not acquiesce to something that multiple board members might
That is
have
correct.
asked
I
for.
did not email him at
Okay.
all. Did not speak to him or email him after your request came in,
Okay.
because it was my understanding that the consent agendas, these special meetings are meant to keep these items and the school district running. And as a new board member, I'm going by what is told to me and what has been the process in the past. When you look at the board meetings from last summer, they were the same thing. They were very short and very on topic. There wasn't add-ins of topics added to those meetings. So I'm going on history of what we've historically done, and then what I have seen we have been doing.
I see. And so just so I
speaking
can.
of which, it looks like we've had the discussion about this. Can we move to a vote?
I'm not quite ready to move to a vote. There are a couple more things I wanted to discuss before we go there.
On this topic?
Yes. Okay. So the other things I wanted to point out, some inaccuracies there on the way that maybe you understand the board. The board doing
Again, that's not about the topic.
the
Topic of how the board procedures, we can talk about board procedures at a different time. The topic at hand right now is adding the motion that you've made.
Okay, I didn't bring it up. It was something that I am trying to ensure that our fellow board member understands, because what she said is inaccurate.
I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that, but that's
But you
not
didn't-
the topic at
you
hand. The
didn't
topic
cut
at
her
hand
off
is
when she
talking
was-
about the
I
vote,
understand,
that's the
President
motion that's on the floor.
Would you
So we
mind
can
letting me
talk about
finish
that.
here?
The two of you can talk after
I'll
about process.
Okay. I appreciate what you're saying, but I would like to also point out that you did not stop Director Gregory over here when she did bring it up. And so the idea that you're going to stop me seems like an unfair running of this board. And I feel like that has happened in the past, and maybe that's how you would like to run this board, but it's not appropriate. If you would like to stop someone from talking about
was
something, you
letting her
should do
answer
so
your
at all
questions,
times. Doing
not
so
move
for
on to a
one board
different
member
topic.
and not, I am not finished speaking. Doing so for one board member and not another board member is absolutely inappropriate. And I don't understand why you would think that that is appropriate. Maybe you don't think of me as being a equal member of this board, but I am. And that is absolutely absurd that you would think that it's okay for someone to say something, and then if someone else says something about the same topic, you are going to stop them, but not the other. I obviously am going to defer to you because you are the president of this board and you are the presiding officer. Is that how you would like to do this meeting?
Again, I let her speak because I wanted to show in deference to you that she had the ability to answer your question that was asked about this. And so I wanted to make sure that you got your full answer, and so I let her do that. If we are staying on topic, I'm happy to continue, but since we're talking about process, that can be discussed at a different time because the motion on the floor and the discussion at topic is about adding the motion. If there's nothing else to be said about the information about adding the motion, we should move to a vote.
And this is exactly why I want to have this discussion. These types of things are inappropriate and unacceptable, and they continue to happen. I'll leave it to a vote, but I'm just saying our board is dysfunctional, and we need to get to the bottom of it because it cannot continue this way.
I will cut Director Gregory off next time when she's answering your question, is what you're suggesting?
I'm not suggesting anything. You run this board how you see fit. Thank you.
Seeing that there's no further discussion on this topic, there's a motion on the floor to add an agenda item about, I'm sorry, what was the terminology used? Board
Adding an agenda item for board communication.
Board communication. It has been seconded. All those in favor, we will do a roll call. Director Gregory?
No.
Director Song? I couldn't hear Director Song.
No.
Director Cook,
Aye.
and I'm a no. The motion fails 1-3. Is there a motion on the floor?
I motion to approve consent agenda items 2.01 through 2.04.
Is there a second? I second it. We're now open for discussion.
So I'm not sure about how things are going on this board. The way that we add things to our meetings, I know that I'm not talking about specifically what we're discussing here, but I asked to discuss things in the appropriate ways, and yet I'm turned down. And then I come here and I ask to do it in the moment, only because it was denied me before, and still turned down. So maybe I misunderstand the way that this board should run, but it seems a little difficult for me to understand this. And I know we're discussing the consent agenda here, but the informational section, is it acceptable for me to discuss one component of that before we get there, or should I wait until we get to the informational section?
It would be most appropriate to discuss any items during the topic when we have them up.
Okay. I'll wait until the informational section to bring it up then.
Okay. Seeing that there's no more discussion on the consent agenda item, a motion's on the floor for approval of item 2.01 through 2.04. All those in favor, we'll do a roll call vote. Director Gregory,
Aye.
Director Song,
Aye.
Director Cook,
Nay, and I'll explain that at a later time here once we get to it.
and I'm a yay. Or an aye. The consent agenda is approved 3-1. We now have the informational item that is attached about the financial report.
So my question on this, I don't know if we can have maybe our finance person come up. I have a question for him regarding the financial report.
Mr. Perringall, could you please join us at the podium? Thank you.
So my question for you is, just under a month ago, we discussed adding the fifth grade camp to our budget. And you had mentioned that you had hoped we would have the information by the July 9th meeting. That wasn't the case, which is why I didn't bring it up then. And now it seems that we do have the May financial report. What in that report did you find? Did we have any additional surplus funds after reviewing that, or was that not the case?
That is not the case. If you look at page 5 of the report, you will see the summary of the general fund where potentially outdoor education fund might be coming from. And so if you would look at page 5 of the report, towards the bottom part of them, it will show that in the month of the year to date, up until the month of May or end of May, that the estimated deficit is about 12.3 million, as opposed to what we anticipated to be 9.7 million. Mm-hmm. And so we are operating with more deficit than what we anticipated as of May 31st. Now, having said that, the year is not over yet. And so then this is the reason why we bring to you the financials on a monthly basis, is to be able to keep monitoring them. Where are we at? Are we on track? Are we not on track? What I could tell you is that at the end of May, we are operating at a higher deficit than what we anticipated.
And what are we cutting to make that work?
Well, we're not necessarily cutting, because the inflow of revenue and the outflow of expenditures are not even on a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. There are months where you spend more, and there are months where you spend less. And so it just so happened that in the month of May, we are showing that the deficit is higher, but potentially, again, potentially maybe June would be the opposite of that. It is our best estimate that our deficit would be at about 9.7 million, and we hope to end at that point. There is also a possibility that the deficit would be lesser. But we won't know that until we continue to monitor them on a month-by-month basis. And so we still have July, August, and September to find out what it would look like.
And so, sorry, I just am curious about that 9.7 million number. My understanding is that we were trying to make up $7.5 million. Has that grown? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, the 9.7 million is the estimated deficit when you adopted the budget for 24-25. The 7.5 million is the estimated budget balancing solution starting in 26-27.
Okay, so it isn't going to be impacting 25-26 as far as the 7.5 million that we're talking about. So that
is
has
correct,
nothing to
yes.
do with the 25-26 school year.
That is correct.
Okay, and we're not adjusting anything for the 25-26 school year in the budget. Is that the
Not as
contention?
of yet, just because, again, the year is not over yet. We still have 3 months. We are still currently paying our bills at this time. Payroll is still going on, and that will happen up until September 30th. Oh, no,
So-
August 31st, sorry.
So are we anticipating now a $9.7 million deficit that we're going to have to make up on top of the 7.5 that we're making up in 26-27?
No, the 9.7 million has always been anticipated. And if I could point you into another page in this report,
Yes.
and that is, I'm sure you probably have seen this in the past, the forecast. And there is it's on actually page 12. So on page 12 of the report, you would see 24-25, that's 9.7 million. That is the budget that was approved last August of 2024.
Okay.
Then in June 25th of 2025, you just approved a budget that shows a 14.9 million deficit. So that's always been anticipated. It's nothing new. And so then if you look at 26-27, that is the 17.5 million deficit is our forecast, which
must be
then
looking
in
at
order
the-
for us to be able to balance or to maintain our 5% reserve or 5% on ending fund balance, we need to implement budget balancing solution at the tune of 7.5 million in 26-27.
Sorry, I must be looking at the wrong information. So you had said the page before as part of the document. Are you talking about page 12 of the full document or page 12 listed on the page?
Page 12 is listed on the page.
Okay, and what section of that shows the 9.7?
Towards the middle where it says deficit, surplus last deficit.
Oh, 9.652, okay.
Yeah.
I see. And then the next year is, so are these cumulative or are these each year is more? Like it's
Those are
individual.
each year.
Okay,
And every deficit that we incur year by year is taken from our ending fund balance. And thus, if we operate this way year by year, our ending fund balance is going to be drained to the extent that it would go negative. This is the reason why our recommendation is to implement a $7.5 million budget balancing solution starting in 26-27, and another 7.5 in 27-28, and another 7.5 in 28-29. By doing that, we will be able to meet the 5% minimum balance that is required by the board.
I see. So what we're talking about here is $22.5 million that we're offsetting the projected like ending fund balance deficit of 11 million. Is that right? Because right now in this document, you're showing an ending fund balance at 28-29 of a deficit of 11 million. Is that right?
Yeah, that is the ending fund balance at the end of 28-29. That is our estimate, yes.
And so what we're planning on doing is addressing that partially, as we will still be at a deficit, I assume, given the fact that even if we take 7.5 million, 26-27 is showing as 17.5, so it would be about a $10 million deficit, and about $11 million deficit in 27-28. And then we would still be at a, I don't know, what is that, 13 million-ish?
Yeah, and this is why the recommendation is to do 7.5 million each year for the next 3 years. It's not just 7.5 million in 26-27 and done. We're going to do 7.5 million in 26-27, and then on top of that, we're going to do another 7.5 in 27-28, and then another 7.5 in 28-29.
So by the second, so not the 25th, 26th, but the 26, 27, it would be $15 million.
We would have done
7.5 plus another 7.5, 15 million. And then you add 15 million to the next year, and it ends up being 21.5.
21.5, correct.
Okay.
And so why didn't we increase it each year, given that our projected balance is increasing by roughly $1 million each year?
Yeah, it could be any number, provided that we hit the 5% each year thereafter. And so the 7.5 is just one scenario. It could be 8, it could be 9, or it could be 7. As long, and again, there are many elements that could contribute to that. For example, we were discussing about a 24-25. Here, if you look at the very first column, the ending fund balance is 60.1 million. Let's just say we do better. And let's say that amount becomes 62 million because we spent less than what we anticipated. Well, that would allow us to be able to delay some of those cuts, or that would allow us to spend to add additional expenditure if that were to happen. At this time, as of May 31st, that's not what we're seeing.
So the projection from May 31st shows us actually in a worse position than we were a month ago.
That is correct.
So we were anticipating 9.7 at the end of the year, and now we're at 12.3. So
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And so we're bleeding more money than we actually anticipated. We had hoped that we were going to be under the 9.7 and be able to pull from that money for a fifth grade camp. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, and there's still a possibility that we would be at 9.7
Yes.
or less than 9.7.
Have we also looked at the projections of the federal budget, because we are not getting the $3.5 million for all of the titles below 2 and everything because the new policy, and they have not been fulfilled in other school districts?
Yes.
So $1 million is not being, automatically is not out there? And
So
then
we
Title
did,
One, one more question.
Go ahead,
Title
go ahead.
One is only going to be funded at 70% and not at the 14 million. It would mean that we would only get $10 million from the federal government for Title One?
yeah. So right after the board adopted the budget, there were 2 updates that we got from OSPI. One was July 1st, and the other one was like few days after that. In both situations, the first one was warning, you may not get this dollars, and it would be at the tune of 4.7 million to 17 million. So that's
Correct.
the range.
Yes.
The second update that we got is more serious than the first, and saying even your carryover dollars, you may not get it. And so when I say more serious, now that and that's after the board adopted the budget, we have not created a model what it would look like if we lose 17 million.
Right.
Because we're still waiting for another update from OSPI. Part of the discussion that we had during the webinar was that he will provide us a more frequent update. That's been about a week ago since that last update, and we have not gotten anything yet. And so we're waiting for what OSPI might say. Are we getting it? Are we not,
not
getting
getting
it?
it.
Are we getting half of them? And so we're still waiting at this time.
But other school districts are predicting, this is my understanding, they are predicting they're not getting their anything below Title I, and Title I is only going to be funded at 70% for next year, based on the final numbers that are coming from the federal government. So potentially, we are going to have a $7.5 million shortfall this year just from the lack of revenue from the federal government.
That is correct. There's a good possibility.
Not to mention the other 10 million that we may not get either. They may not fund the 10 million that they are supposed to fund either, based on what's going on at our federal level.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
And, sorry, I just want to clarify, the amount that our fund balance needs to be, and I assume this is the subtotal unassigned fund balance is the percentage that we're looking at to keep so that we're still within that range. That equates to, it looks like, right around $25 million, is that correct?
What column are you looking at?
So I'm looking at that first column from 24-25, and I'm looking at the unassigned minimum fund balance, which is 5%. It's showing that at $25,903,000.
Correct, yeah.
And by the end of this, we are looking at a deficit of 14.4 million. But our increase that we're looking at doing by adding that all together would be 22 million. And 22 million minus 14 million would still put us nowhere near the 5% needed. So I assume we're going to have to cut drastically, much, much more to be able to meet that 5% balance. And we're not doing so 24-25?
So when you think about the first 7.5 million, so let's think about the 26-27, 7.5 million. That is a permanent cut, and therefore the impact of that in the next 3 years would be 22.5 million. That alone, the 26-27 alone, has a impact of 22.5 million in the next 3 years. Then you look at 27-28, you do another 7.5 million permanent cut. The impact of that in the next 2 years would be 15. So now we're looking at 22.5 plus 15. Then the last year in 28-29, we do another 7.5. That would be on top of those, the first two that I mentioned. So 22.5 plus 15 plus 7.5. That would be the impact to the very last year, whatever the total of that, minus 14 million, that would be the outcome. And I could tell you that that amount would be more or less about $30 million. I mean, I don't have the calculator here, but just mental math, that would be roughly about 30 million.
But we're looking at, numbers here that are growing pretty impressively, honestly. We're going from 53 million this year, this upcoming school year, it looks like, or no, this school year, to 39 million, which is, almost a $14 million drop. And then we go from 39 million down to 23 million. That's another $16 million dropped. And then we go down to 5.8 million, and that's another nearly $20 million before we go down to 14.4, which is another nearly $20 million. How are we thinking that 7.5 is anywhere near enough? Like, if we're losing nearly $20 million a year, and that fund balance is projected to be 14 million for, then our adding 22.5 is going to still only put us at roughly, sorry, let me take a look at my number here. Is that 8 million, I think?
So
Like, how is that? Because our funding balance needs to stay at 25, and it actually goes up because our costs go up. So then our unassigned minimum fund balance, which is 5%, is going to go to 29 million. But my calculations show that we're only going to have 8 million in the unassigned fund balance.
I understand how confusing it is, and so it could be best described if we go back to the presentation on June 25th. And I don't know if I could actually show them right here, the presentation that we did on June 25th. So, okay, so let me just see. Because that presentation could explain exactly how it goes.
That has the algorithm in it to show how it
Correct.
works.
So, how would I do this?
At the regular
The regular meeting, yes. Or we could do,
meeting, June 25th.
yeah, that's the adoption.
Adoption?
Yes. There should be a presentation.
There's
It's
the
in there.
cumulative
It's up
of the amount
above. You want to go up a little
years
bit.
plus.
It's in 4.02.
There
There
it
you go.
is.
All right, so let's go take a look at the forecast here. So this is the forecast. This is similar to what you're seeing on page 12, although this is a summarized version. And so you see here, same deficit, it's all rounded. But then when we formulate the proposed solution, it's on the next slide. And this is the impact of the $7.5 million. The first $7.5 million has an ongoing effect for the next 3 years. And so when we make permanent cuts in 26, 27, the value of that in the next 3 years is 22.5. And then when we do another 7.5 in 27, 28, the value of that would be 15 million. And then,
So let me get this straight. We're looking at cutting 26, 27, 7.5. We're looking at 15 million that we're cutting the next year. So we're cutting 7.5 the first year, 15 million the next year,
No.
and then 22.5 million.
no,
The
no,
third.
we're only cutting 7.5 million in 26, 27. And then on permanent cut, meaning like it's ongoing, meaning we're not restoring it back. And then on the second year, 27, 28, we're gonna cut an additional 7.5 million on top of that.
Yeah.
Think about it as a stair step.
Yes, but so that's what I'm saying. The first year it's 7.5 million, then we're cutting 15 million.
No.
Because it's being added to it. No.
Yeah, it's being added to it. So you're not gonna make the 15, you're gonna do 7.5 year one. That cut would remain.
Stays,
It would
and then we
remain.
add another 7.5 million.
Correct.
Yes.
So it's 7.5 the first year, that cut stays, so the cut still from 24, 25 is now 15 million in 27, 28.
The impact to the second year is 15.
Yes.
Yes, and then the third year is 22.5 million.
Correct.
And so, but at that point, we anticipate that $22.5 million is going to cover everything in perpetuity? So-
Correct, yes.
Yes.
So, okay, but this is a little scary, honestly, because $22.5 million is a lot of money. Where do we have a list of what we're cutting?
We don't have a list right now. We are looking at every area of the budget in terms of where the 7.5 million, the first and second and third 7.5 might come from. We had a list, and we're going to be reviewing that list again very, very soon.
When do we anticipate having, because, I mean, 26, 27 is going to come up quick. I mean, we have one school year, and then that stuff starts coming into play. So when do we anticipate actually having, like, line items that we are looking at for what we're going to cut?
So Vice President Cook, appreciate the question. The last 3 years, we began having conversations around the reductions that need to be made through a stair-step method starting in the fall. Literally having executive cabinet conversations starting in October and November around the cuts that need to be made for the following budget cycle. And so, no different than what's going to be happening this year for the next year. We've done this now for 3 years where we've engaged our labor partners in conversations, specifically our principals, around various pieces of the budget. We've looked at efficiencies, we look at our revenues and expenditures, we look at what are the things that we've been doing that are nice to do and the things that we need to do that are basically legal and or binding based on compliance. And so these are conversations we have year-round, and we have been having them year-round for the last 3 years, and we've been making reductions every year for the last 3 years in preparation for this. This is why Kent School District is in a much better position than many of our neighboring districts who are making massive and drastic reductions this year for next year, and then they'll have to make drastic reductions in the following years after that. And so what Mr. Parangao has shared through all of his budget work sessions and the budget presentations is how we're going to continue, because what we don't want to do is go out and cut $20 million next year, because what that looks like is just a mass, deconstruction of programs, people, systems, and things like that, versus being very intentional, looking at where all of our money is and where we can be systematic to be able to address $7.5 million a year for the next 3 years, beginning in 26, 27 to 28, 29. And so instead of going out and just cutting 15 million and then going, okay, well, that buys us 2 years, the impact that would have to our system and our labor partners and the contracts, again, we have to remember over 80% of all of our budget is in people. And we are obligated to those contracts and that language in those contracts to compensate our employees as such. So we just can't go in there and say we're going to cut $15 million because now you're looking at the impact on the teacher's contract, the paras contract. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people that are impacted, which is why we've been taking our time, reducing every year for the last 3 years, preparing to go into reducing in 26, 27, $7.5 million. This is a conversation we have every single week of every month of the school year for the last 3 years. So we don't take it lightly. And again, I think a majority of our labor partners know what's going on. They're seeing what's happening in districts around us. And we are being very intentional and respectful of our contracts with our labor partners. So, yeah.
It is
go ahead.
also intentionally labeled as budget balancing solution. I shared in this board multiple times that to balance the budget is not just simply expenditure reduction. It has to start with efficiencies. What kind of efficiencies can we make from the existing processes and system that we have? Is there an opportunity for us to increase our revenue? As mentioned in this presentation also, that the EP&O levy is going to go expire in December 2027. Is there an opportunity there? And the third item is once you exhaust all your efficiencies and your revenue enhancement, then that's the time when we're going to go into expenditure reduction. We need to be able to demonstrate that we exhaust all our options before we do expenditure reductions.
I would also like to point out that all of us are very concerned about this. I think every district, every board member is. And so thus, I've asked for a doubling of the number of budget discussions that we have on next year's agendas. So we will have even more conversations about this throughout the year to make sure that there are no surprises.
And I do want to say that from a accounting perspective, coming from that field, it's important that we're not shocking the system, and we are being diligently now, and we're prepping everybody. We're not just coming into it and saying, now, we do have one thing that may help be that is if we don't get our federal dollars next year, we may have a different conversation in a couple of months when we don't get our funding. So I think we just need to be cognizant of that as well, that this may drastically change based on what's happening at the federal level.
That is true, and also
I think you bring.
I also want to share that
Some of this we have to wait, some of the data.
Yes.
also want to share that I think just simply basing it on the information that I gather from my colleagues, because we meet as part of the King County, Kent is unique in a way that we look at the current plus 4 years
Right.
as we make decisions. Every decision that we make today is not simply looking at the current year, because if I were to look at the current year, I'd say, oh yeah, we're good. We have 10.2%. We could
Right.
afford this and we could afford that. No, we look at the current plus 4. And we always look at what is the impact today, how will that affect us in the future?
Right.
I guess I just would like to see at least a basic understanding of what it is that we're planning on cutting. $22.5 million is a lot of money to cut. And overall, throughout those 3 years, it's even more. I mean, we're looking at, $40 million plus. And that's a lot of money. That's out of our budget altogether. And I just don't know, I feel that we need to be including our community in these decisions, because it's impacting their kids. It's impacting their money. It's not our money. It is theirs that they are, kind enough to allow us to have. And I don't see how we ever pass another levy or bond if we're not like getting them to tell us what they want. And so far, all I hear is that, oh, we're working on that. And we'll go, we've been doing a great job. But if we were doing a great job, I don't know how we would end up here other than the state and the federal government have given some very difficult changes to us. But I mean, if we had planned better, maybe we wouldn't have to make these huge cuts over the next 3 cycles.
But I think to your point, I think one of the biggest challenges we have right now is we have a lot of community members. We talked about fifth grade camp, very passionate about it. We didn't cut fifth grade camp. This board didn't cut fifth grade camp. Fifth grade camp was cut at the Washington state level. We did not receive the funding on their program. They cut that program. Our governor cut that program, lined it out, and then approved his budget. So the money that we have set aside for programs for us that are very important to our community were cut not by us, but cut by our state. So if we also want to make sure that we are funding for the future, we should have conversations with our state representatives and our senators from our state to have those discussions about what's important for our kids. Because part of our money comes from the federal level, but it also comes from the state level. And that's the other thing I think is important for our community to understand, that we face tough decisions on this dais because we also, we plan for camp. We have it in the budget. We have it every year. And we're not having it because it was cut at the state level, not at our level.
One of the things to also consider in evaluating why our expenditure is outpacing our revenues is the slide that is here. These are the, every line right here are categories that are not funded by the state. The first 2 lines made up of about $65 million is what we call the under formula. We got funded on a per FTE basis, a certain dollar amount, but the state really has not adjusted their funding, the money that they're giving to us, to the market rate. So we're paying our people significantly more than what the state is funding us. And those are the product of our labor negotiation and things like that. I would also point out special education here. We have IEPs, we have mandates that we have to comply with. The state funds us $79.4 million, and based on all the IEPs and the contracts that we have, we spend about $103 million. We're short by about $24 million. Guess where this money is coming from? It's actually covered by a portion of them covered by the EP&O levy, which is a total of about $80 million. So if you look at all the underfunding by the state, the total is about $131 million. We got $80 million out of the generosity of our community, which is about 61% of that. And so then where is the difference coming from? It's coming from the ending fund balance.
Balance.
So with the cuts that the state and federal government made to each of these different, categories, so to say, are we looking to cut in the same way as they did? Because they are refusing to fund us appropriately, and they're now reducing our funding even more. Are we planning on doing that in the same fashion so that we show what our state is doing to us?
To a certain extent, yes, but not always, because we still have to provide the basic services to our children. And so, for example, if Title I were to go away, conceivably we could just, all the services that is related to Title I, we could just cut them and don't provide for our children. But reality is that those children needed it.
Right.
Our children needed those services. And so we have to figure out a way from the basic ed funding to provide some of those services to mitigate some of those negative impact.
And superintendents have been meeting, they meet monthly. Puget Sound ESD meets monthly. And there's been advocacy at the state level by the superintendents year after year after year to show them and remind them that you don't fully fund education. That districts all over the state, depending on their size, have similar graphs or representations like this table, depending on how big they are, all over the state. Every single district has something that looks like this. It might be a different number to show the state that you're not fully funding us.
Yes.
They have people that are in Olympia advocating during the legislative session constantly to remind them they need a fully funded education. Again, we went through it this year. Our big three: transportation, MSOC, special education. What did we get out of it? A little teeny bit more in special education. But again, this year, we're down $24 million in upside down for special education. So if they say, oh gosh, Kent School District, next year you're gonna get $3 million more. Well, great, we're still $20 million or $21 million upside down in special ed. It doesn't help. You know, it makes a little teeny bit of a dent. And we're pounding the pavement, we're knocking on the doors, we're yelling and screaming, we're making a big argument, we're doing all those things. So it's not like we're not doing that. In fact, there's been conversations within superintendents about, you know, maybe there needs to be a McCleary 2.0. Because what happened, you know, several years ago when McCleary came was the lawsuit against the state saying, you guys are not fully funding education. And it took a little bit of that to rattle the cage. We still didn't get fully funded. But there's conversations about that. Like, you guys need to make it a priority. Because 7 years ago, state funding for education was at 54%, and we're at 42% right now. And again, with the $9 billion deficit that we all know has hit the state, I mean, it's tight. I don't see, and we don't see a lot of that money that's going to be coming to us, especially over the next couple of years, as they're making large-scale cuts across the state. It's frustrating. I get it. I mean, I think there's not a superintendent out there that hasn't, you know, exerted themselves and pushed themselves in that space with legislators about how important it is and the impact it's having. Because what it does is push it back to us, and then we as a district, whether there's community input or not, but as educators, we have to make decisions on, well, what are we not gonna do?
Right.
What programs are we not gonna run? Which people are less valuable than another set of people? That's not conversations we wanna have. Who's gonna miss out or lose out? At the federal level, they're not even thinking about kids. Right now, they're like, how do we save money? Oh, great, let's cut this program, this title, this title, this title. They're not even thinking about that. And the impact it has on kids. And they're going straight after, at the federal level, straight after our kids of color and our kids who don't speak English as a first language. I mean, that's exactly the ramifications that we're gonna feel in this district and in this state and in this country. It's frustrating, Vice President Cook, so I know exactly what you're saying. I know, I get what you're saying, and we're all passionate about that. And it is important. I try to think about, what does it look like to have community input when you have to make budget reductions? You know, because educators in a space, when we're looking at what programs are important for kids, everyone comes in with their own experiences as parents. You can have community members come in and say, well, I don't have kids in the system anymore, I think you should cut X, Y, and Z. But yet, we have other parents that will come in and say, don't cut X, Y, and Z because we need that. Cut A, B, and C, because I'm not impacted by that. And then you got principals going, don't cut A, B, and C because we can't run E, F, and G. I mean, all those pieces. And so it could be a really cumbersome experience. Not saying that, and again, I think Megan made it very clear, President Margell made it clear, is like, we're gonna add additional work sessions and presentations with the budget throughout this next year and moving forward, because it's important that we're continue to be transparent. There's so much going on, there's so many moving parts. People need to know when we go down this road that we have to make some tough decisions. And we don't want anyone to think that we just all of a sudden came up with something. We'd like to keep people updated on a pretty regular basis so people feel like they're involved or they're knowledgeable of what position we're being put in. And that's why it's important. Watch the news, find out what's going on. Watch the work sessions when it comes to the budget. Pay attention. Look at the other districts that are around us that are, you know, letting all their assistant principals go, that are making cuts, that are shutting down buildings, that are doing all these different things, because the impact is real. It hasn't gotten to us because we've been strategic these last 3 years. It doesn't mean that it's not gonna sting in Kent.
Right.
It is. We just haven't gotten to the stinging year yet, but it's coming, as you've all noticed. That 7.5 million, you know, there's only so much you can get out of that, out of efficiencies and looking for revenue enhancements. It's gonna come down to where do you make the cuts? And again, we said 80% of our money is people. That's tough.
Right.
Because the people are the ones that are getting the work done for our kids. That's tough.
And
So-
without people, you have an increase of class size, and
Absolutely.
it is a snowball effect.
So go ahead.
I think that this is really important conversation, and I think that everything that we've asked Mr. Parengao for, we asked him in the last couple of work sessions, we need to get a list, we need to find out final numbers, we need to do this sooner than later. We've added additional work sessions, and I feel like at this point, I think we are all beyond disappointed at the place that I feel like that the federal and state have left us with underfunding our schools, and that we have big decisions that we have to make as a board going forward. But I don't feel like that tonight is the night that we're going to be able to do some of that, because we need to have additional information. And so I would like to propose that we have continued these conversations very robustly in all of the additional sessions that we have when we have a bit more information too. I know the numbers that we're looking at and some feedback from the administration on potential areas for savings and additional revenue.
So I just wanted to state one thing about the importance of including our community. And I understand that there are different priorities from different groups, different stakeholders, our students, our principals, the administrative staff here, that I do find those all important. But I want to read something from our legislature. The people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people, in delegating authority, do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed and informing the people's public servants of their views so that they may retain control over the instruments they have created. That is so important to remember. We are here because they allow us to be. When we do things as a board, it is through their choice that we are allowed to make those decisions, and it isn't up to us to decide for them what is important and what is not. It is imperative that we get our community to come in here, and I know that maybe we only have those 10 voices that we keep talking about as being the only people that come and visit us. That means we need to do better. We need to get out there and get people involved, because they only see that their kids are not being served the way they used to be. All they see is that we're cutting things. If we involve them, if we can get them to come out and try to involve them as much as we possibly can, then it is a true collaborative effort. And then we won't have as many of these issues where we have to reduce our levies because we're not able to pass them at the levels we were. We won't have to worry about passing a bond so that we can actually replace some of these buildings. And that's where I think the biggest difference is. You know, if we can get that sort of buy-in from our community, we can make drastic changes here that will set us up for success in perpetuity going forward. And that's where I really want us to focus, because I know the state is hamstringing us in this, but the way that we can fix that is through finding ways to get these levies passed so that we can use those funds and we can increase our levies. Because if our state's going to reduce our funding, the only thing we can do if we want to keep what we have is to increase our levies to make up that difference. Now, at some point, we will hit a ceiling, right? And that's a whole other discussion. But if our community knows, hey, we've done everything we can, and our state is now telling us we can't make the choice to do any better, then maybe we will get people to be upset enough to go out and do it. And the other part of that is, you know, if the state and the federal government is saying, oh, you know what, Title I isn't important, we're not going to fund Title I, and we decide, no, we think it is important, we're going to do it anyway. If we don't have buy-in from our community saying, yeah, we're going to do it and we're going to pay for it, then we have to pull from everywhere else to make that work. And we're then saying, you know what, federal government, we don't care what you say, we're going to still do it. And that's fine, But if we don't have buy-in from our community, I don't know that we can get them to increase that amount so that we can provide for all of those other things that we end up having to cut so that we can do those things. Not that I'm saying that we shouldn't, because I absolutely believe in Title I funding. I can't believe that I'm even having this conversation. The idea that our federal government is saying we're not going to support those that need the help the most, like that is absolutely insane. But that's where we are. And maybe our community needs to say, hey, you know what? We get it. Our federal government obviously is in disarray and doesn't know what the heck they're doing, but we're going to take it on ourselves. And I think that's, if we can somehow get that through and have the people being the advocates for us instead of us having to do so. Because I think it is different. You have, like, if we were to have somehow 100,000 of our local residents show up down in Olympia, you think that might make a difference? I absolutely know it would. You know, if we show up with 1,000 people, and that's a huge difference made right in front of them, you know, and that's where I think we forget that the power is in the people. And right now it is showing, you know, when you lose the power of the people, now things like the president can just go and get rid of things. But if we had done it, and said, no, our community's paying for it and we want this and this is something important to us, we decide it. And that means there's no boundaries. We can decide, hey, you know what? We don't like the way our state legislature is doing it. We're going to change that too. All of those things are available because we are the ones that decide that. And I feel like we forget that a lot. And not just us. I'm saying we as, you know, elected officials across the state, they forget who is it that put them there. And if you're hurting the people that put you in office, you had better come back and start asking for more and try and get them involved. Because if you don't, they're not gonna help you to get there. And I hope that we can start working on that, because I think that's something that I don't know that other districts are even trying. And I think it's something that could really be a game changer for us. I hope. I don't know. But
Thank you, Director Cook. All really good thoughts and things to definitely consider as we move forward in this, because I think we're going to have to employ kind of all of the tactics, right?
Of course.
Okay. I'm going to say that unfortunately that I wish that we were ending on a happier note for all of this, but I think that we are all very impassioned about this, and there will be big discussions to come forward on this and with all of the stakeholders. So it is 6:19, and we're going to adjourn the special meeting.